Framed by the May River in Calabogie Sound, Harbor Town is going to welcome its best field ever in the world ranking era. Next on Golf Central, you will hear why Bryson DeChambeau could be changing the mindset of some PGA Tour members. Plus, why players may be hearing applause sooner than they expected. It's next on Golf Central.
Golf Central, brought to you by TaylorMade.
Good evening, welcome inside Studio A. It is nice to have you with us on this Tuesday evening of Golf Central. We have Lisa Cornwell anchored down in Harbor Town all week, and we welcome her in now. Lisa, it's great to see you. You know, there are a number of very good stories that came out of the first week back, and someone who has always been a talking point for various reasons. And since we came on the air, he's probably gained a pound, added another mile per hour to his ball speed. That, of course, being Bryson DeChambeau. Good to see you.
Thanks, Gary. It's good to see you. And, you know, look, as a woman, I'm really jealous of people like that. We've been quarantined and gaining weight. I've been trying to shed those pounds, and here Bryson DeChambeau is trying to add to it. And you're probably right. It probably is another pound and another mile per hour on the ball speed. How about that, watching it last week at Colonial? You know, we're seeing numbers that we've never really seen on the PGA Tour consistently. I mean, Bubba's reached a threshold that has been different and elevated, but Bryson DeChambeau is just on this little journey. He talked about last fall to get to these numbers, obviously 240 pounds, but over 190 miles an hour of ball speed. You know, when we talk about the guys on World Long Drive, obviously in excess of 200 miles an hour consistently to get it out there. But Bryson, with this 5.5-degree driver, it's really impressive. And when you talk to the players, it's not just impressive with how far he's hitting it, but it's how straight he's hitting it as well.
To me, there has to be a threshold or a peak to speed and distance, as far as at some point it becomes kind of counterproductive. And it seems like maybe that 190 range is maybe where it starts to tip, as far as the faster you're swinging, that little bit off, your dispersion becomes greater. So figuring out where is that peak, and I think that's kind of what Bryson's exploring. How far can he go until it becomes kind of a step backwards? So obviously last week, looking at his driving stats, it's pretty impressive. It's impressive what he's done, you know, with his body strength and, you know, club head speed, ball speed.
I would probably put on 75 pounds to add 20 miles an hour ball speed. It's really impressive. You know, I remember he spoke to the press after Vegas last year, after Shriners, and said he was going to, you know, experience change and he was going to get stronger and increase his ball speed. And we show up at Hero World Challenge, and he was already bigger and hitting it further. And, you know, sure enough, COVID comes, and he's got a lot more time to devote to getting bigger. And I put my hands on his shoulders last week just because he's, you know, he looks like a different person. But, you know, it's really impressive to be able to change your body that fast and put on that, you know, that much weight and still not, you know, have it affect your game in a negative way.
What he's doing is really interesting, to be honest with you. He looks like a different person. He's much bigger. I think he said he gained 2 shirt sizes. And then to see, I only saw him hit one shot on TV last week. It was, I think, on the second day off the first tee, and I think his ball speed was 185. The player that hit right in front of him was Dustin Johnson. His ball speed was 177. So for me, that was kind of an eye raiser. Dustin's pretty big, pretty strong, athletic, hits it pretty far. If you're gaining 8 miles an hour on Dustin Johnson, that's moving it. So, you know, it's interesting. I think we're in an era right now with golf, the way it's played, the way our golf courses are set up. It's quite an advantage to be able to hit the ball far like that, and I can see why so many guys are kind of chasing distance, using technology, using launch monitors for launch and spin, for equipment to gain distance, and it's definitely affecting the game.
One thing is for sure, when all these guys are talking about Bryson, there is a smile on their face, just reflecting not only the weight that he's gained since last fall, but just the ability to do what he's wanted to do. He told me in Hero that he wanted his body to be more like a gymnast. Now, I saw him in person for the first time. He looks a little bit more beefed up than a gymnast. And listen, Gary, who better to talk about ball speed and swing speed? I know you have Trip Eisenhower there. He can really dial in for all those numbers.
He certainly can. So what's so interesting is to hear someone like Jim Furyk say, it's interesting. And Ricky Fowler and Webb Simpson, they're a cross-section generationally in terms of age and experience. You know, look, every sport is a copycat sport, but it's predicated on a defense. Usually, football, run-pass option is now the vogue thing. The defense in golf is the golf course itself. Will there be a lot of copycats to what he's doing?
Without question. Absolutely, without question. And I talked about it last night. Look, hats off to Bryson. I give him credit. And what Ricky said is, Ricky Fowler was saying in there, it was, where is the threshold? I mean, that's what we've got to find out. And, you know, he's going to push the limit and find out. At some point, there has to be a breaking point. I've done some of the World Long Drive contest, you know, not participating in them, but I was there working them for Golf Channel. And I can tell you those kind of swing speeds, they can hit balls way offline because that grid is pretty wide. But when they connect, it goes. Now, they're not trying to shoot a score. They're trying to hit it as far as they can and hit one in the grid that's the further than everybody else. Trying to play is a different animal, but this is something that the USGA and the RNA better watch out for. They cannot wait on this because this is something everybody can do. We saw Phil Mickelson add a ton of speed, 6 miles an hour, and in his late 40s. Okay, so this can, and he wasn't doing it necessarily in the gym. Maybe if he would have added more there, like Bryson, then he would have maybe added even more miles per hour. It's something that can be duplicated. It's not easy to do. Mind you, I'm giving Bryson credit and anybody who does it. It's not an easy thing to do. But where the governing bodies have to step in and put some sort of parameters on this, they can make the dispersion patterns greater for greater swing speeds. But still, if you hit it in the middle, you're going to be rewarded. In history, the greatest drivers in the game, Greg Norman, Jack Nicklaus, Ben Hogan, they all hit a very tiny sweet spot, and they could hit it with high speeds for their times. So they got rewarded with that, and that's exactly what I want to see, and I want to see when you miss-hit at those speeds, I want balls going where you can't find them.
Well, look, he's added 20 yards statistically in a short amount of time in terms of the number of starts this year to what his driving distance was last year. But he's not 25 yards longer than the guy who's second in driving distance. He's only a couple of yards. So why is he the impetus for an evaluation on everything in terms of distance? Because Cameron Champ and Rory McIlroy and Bubba Watson are right there.
Well, but see, he's elevating it. He's getting it over 200 in practice, okay? Now, he's not quite playing there yet, but the way he's going about it is, look, it's a very disciplined approach, and he is hitting drives that are carrying way further than he's ever hit it before.
Right.
And that's the issue. And it's the fact of this is something that will be duplicated, and it's going to be duplicated a lot. And we've had an issue with distance over the years, but right now it could spiral into a bigger problem where golf courses like Colonial and this week at Harbor Town, even though it's probably the second shortest or third shortest driving distance on the PGA Tour because it throttles you back. But again, this is what we're seeing. So I hope the governing bodies don't wait on this one and do something about putting spin back on the ball when it mishits the sweet spot. That's all. That's all they need to do. Not bifurcate, none of that other stuff, not roll the ball back. Just make some balls that spin a little bit off of clubs that have bulge and roll in them.
I'll tell you the thing that might be the most impressive. He's done all of this in such a short amount of time. He's actually improved statistically in all the other areas.
Yeah, no,
all those other areas have not fallen
He's a great player.
No, he is.
Yeah, and now he's added this element.
He's golf's great experiment.
He is.
All right. And when you look at the tee times, again, loaded in terms of these featured groups. Koepka, Reed, Daniel Berger off the win at Colonial, Rory, C.T. Pan, the defending champion, and Ricky Fowler off that miscut. DJ, Gary Woodland, Hideki Matsuyama, good to see him back. He's had a very good start to his season. And Thomas, Rose, and Rahm. And, of course, coverage, the PGA Tour with Koepka, Thomas, Woodland, and many, many more at Harbour Town for the RBC Heritage. Pre-game coverage Thursday at 11 a.m. Our featured group coverage begins at 1 p.m. Eastern on Golf. Now news from the LPGA. The LPGA Drive-On Championship has bin announced. Dublin, Ohio will be the focus of the PGA Tour for 2 weeks in the middle of July. Then it's going to be Toledo and Sylvania in Northwest Ohio will be the center of golf for the LPGA for the events that are now in place. The Marathon Classic will move back to the first full week in August, and Inverness will play host to the LPGA's Drive-On Championship, a 3-day event concluding on August 2nd. That's terrific news for Mike Wan and the LPGA and all of the players. Now, on the European Tour, they too have added some events. You can see that the Austrian Open, July 9th to the 12th, they will stay in Austria the following week. That week is usually the customary week for the Open Championship. Of course, that was canceled. And then the British Masters at Close House, that will be hosted by Lee Westwood in England.